Welcome to Toy Business Unboxed, your gateway to the secrets of the toy industry. Here, Jason Shea, a toy entrepreneur and expert in the field.
Every product we develop is really inspired by some of the real life experience that we have with our son.
60% of all toys last year were sold on Amazon, which is incredible.
Be passionate about it because it's a road, it's a journey.
Like when you have an idea that you think is like gonna somewhat like change the world, make things better, I'd say go for it.
We'll guide you through the enchanting world of toy design, marketing, and manufacturing. Now let the unboxing begin.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Toy Business Unboxed. Today we're talking to Simon, the co-founder of Strongpoint Game. They are an indie publisher that is making wave in the industry. Simon took the leap into doing this business full-time to be a full-time game publishers and navigating a lot of different challenges in self-publishing, marketing, and growing the brands in the very competitive space. And today I'm looking forward to today's interview and sharing some of Simon's stories. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be involved.
Yeah, so let's first off, can we kind of dive into your story on how you got started and what inspired you to create the game company that you have today?
I mean, I think it begins with a love of games. So I grew up playing board games, played a lot of them from very early on in my childhood, and while occasionally as you're doing adult things, you drift away from those things. But once I met Jill, my partner, it became part of our life playing games again. And then, as we all know, in 2020, COVID hit, and like a lot of people, you were confined to your homes. And one of the things that kind of kept a lot of people going and kept us going was playing games. That was something that I think was a catalyst and for a lot of people to get back into the games industry or games playing. And it was while we were doing that, we were doing we had 30 minutes daily exercise that we were allowed to get outside and do that. And while we were doing those 30-minute runs, we started the conversation about what would it be like if we could come up with a game, and we started just chatting, and we had an idea for a game that we thought actually, it's a good concept, it's a strong concept, and that was kind of really where we got the inspiration to go, yeah, well, let's see what we can do with this. Let's see what can become of it, rather than just have it as an idea that rattles around in our heads. Can we make it something real? So it was that opportunity, I think, that was apart from the fact that we are games lovers. It was the opportunity to do something like this that kind of inspired us to give it a go.
Yeah, and I think you have some of the game actually in your room as well. Could you share the first game that you created as a company?
Yeah,
And
so the
the idea
first
behind it?
one is this one here, which is called Strongpoint, and it's a trivia-based game. So the kind of the hook to it, or the twist to it, or the USP, as you like to say in business circles, is that it's not just about answering questions on trivia, and it's not just about your own knowledge. When you're playing the game, you're secretly predicting what other players are going to get on their turn. So you have a category with 5 questions to answer on that category, and it could be anything from the periodic table to TV cartoon pets. So there's all sorts of different subjects in there. You get to answer 5 questions, and everybody else secretly predicts how many they think you'll get right. So whether that subject could be a strong point of yours. So that's our first game, and then we're now in the stages where we've just released an expansion pack to go with that, and we're this year, probably May this year, will be the second expansion pack to the game, which is aimed at youngsters. So it's a set of cards, 100 category cards, that are specifically targeted at a younger playing audience, so
Hmm.
they can just join in without being uh, penalised, if you like, by having categories that are probably a little bit out of their knowledge base. They'll
Hmm.
have their own categories in the expansion that are within their sphere, kind of thing. So that's where we're at the moment.
Yeah, and going back to your story a little bit further, because it's kind of similar to how I started, because I also started this business part time many years ago, back in
Yeah.
2017, and I think you also went through this transition period of like working on the business part time, and you finally decided to go full time in 2024. What make you finally decide to go full time, and how has that transition been like?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm full time. Jill, my partner, who's the other side of the other person involved in Strongpoint Games, she still works part time in her other job. So I was working in education,
Hmm.
freelance in education. So I would go into schools and deliver um, physical education lessons. And it
Hmm.
came to the point at the end of the last academic year,
Hmm.
one of my major contracts, one of the schools that I did a lot of work in, were looking to move in a different direction,
Hmm.
and so they said I wouldn't be needed from for this academic year going forward. And
Oh.
actually, it
Mm.
was it was a case that it was the push that I needed. So I
Hmm.
was at that point faced with the choice of, do I go out and seek more contracts to do that job, or do
Yeah,
I just go full time and give everything I've got to Strongpoint Games? And it was an
mhm,
easy decision. It was an
I
easy
see.
decision to
Yeah,
make.
yeah.
This is where my passion is. This is what I love to do.
Mhm,
Like I said, we love playing games. I love create the idea of creating more games and having a whole catalog. And the dream is eventually to be the point where we are employing other people to come up with games ideas,
mhm.
and we have a team that we're working with. That's kind of our vision, our goal, where we want to be further down the line.
Yeah, and I think one of the common issue that a lot of the company is facing is to make that decision of self publishing versus licensing some of your board game
Yeah.
to like bigger or more established publishers. What was some of the like challenge you face early on when you're making that decision from like, oh, do I go with the licensing route or do I go with the self publishing route?
Do you know, basically the main reason behind it was a lack of knowledge of what options there were to us at the point, because we came into this from different backgrounds. We weren't in
Mhm,
the toys and games industry at all up until
mhm,
4 years ago. So we didn't have that knowledge of, oh, we should come up with an idea and go and pitch it to a publisher. We just thought, we've got this idea, we think it's
mhm,
good. We tested it with different groups. They all said it was really good.
mhm,
And they all said, well, if we could buy this, we would. So we thought, well, let's give those people that opportunity. And we just went down the self-publishing route because we had no we basically had no other knowledge of what else to do other than try and fund it ourselves and do it in our own way.
mhm.
Um, and we're glad we did that. I mean, like you said, there are definitely challenges to being an indie publisher, um, but we're glad we did that. We kind of have that. We control the direction of flow for our business going forward. We're not in the hands of somebody else to say, we like the idea of the game, but we're going to do it this way.
Yeah, yeah.
It's our game, and we get to publish it in the way we want, which I
Mhm,
guess is a little naive, but also I think for a lot of people, especially in the board game indie board game community, that is
mhm.
what people want to do. They want that control a little bit, but obviously the the challenges are huge when you start as an indie publisher.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges that you face so far?
Well, I mean, I think that the lack of knowledge, the not knowing what you don't know,
Mm,
is one of the challenges, because we've had to learn everything that we've done, we've had to learn it on the fly as we're going along. So
Hmm.
it's all had the concept, we knew what we wanted to do. We had to learn how to contact manufacturers. We had to learn
Hmm.
about how they even wanted all the files for manufacture to be sent to them. All these sorts of things that
Hmm.
you don't necessarily, when you're coming up with the idea for designing a game, you don't think, well, you've got to be able to do this, you've got to be able to do that. To the
Yeah.
extent that when we when we first manufactured the game, when we wrote all the category cards for the games, they were all done in kind of sets, so that they were all,
Okay.
all the questions that were relative to music were all together, all the questions that were relative to films were all together, and so on. So
Hmm.
when the manufacturers got those files and we got the game back, all
Yeah.
those sets of cards were all together. So when people first got the game, it looked like all the questions were all very similar categories. So we had to open up all the get boxes of the games and hand shuffle them so that when people got the game, they weren't
I see.
thinking this is rubbish. They're all the questions are all the same. So
Hmm.
we had to go through the first 750 boxes of the game and shuffle them ourselves. So, so that people, and
Oh.
it's that kind of not
Hmm.
knowing that sort of thing when you first start that was
Hmm.
one of the huge challenges. Now we're at a
Hmm.
position where where we know a little more about what we're doing. So
Hmm.
yeah, we're one thing you do adapt very quickly is you tend not to make the same mistakes twice.
Yeah, that's very important. Learn from our mistake, and get
Yeah,
better, get better, and be more efficient from it too. So,
absolutely.
and with the current landscape, I know there's a lot of like board game companies and card game company that's like popping up, and as if you look at the Kickstarter landscape, there's a lot more company that's coming up with different concept or different board games and card game idea. How do you compete with all the different brands in the board game industry? What do you have any special? Do you have any strategy or things that you have in mind?
I mean, it's it's a like you said, it's a huge landscape. I mean, I think I read something. There's over 3,000 new board games published every year. So
Hmm.
you are competing in a vast pool of other games that you're trying to get noticed in. And
Hmm.
when you're an indie publisher, you're very much your game is very much a little fish in a very big pond, and you're
Yeah.
competing even on Kickstarter. Some of the huge games publishers use Kickstarter as a way of getting their games and notice, getting awareness of their games, and that's
Yeah.
some of the biggest publishers do that. So it is difficult to get yourself noticed. I think what you have to do first and foremost is you have to make sure that the game that you come out with is a good concept, it's strong, and it's fun to play. And if it
Mm.
isn't those things, if it isn't fun, and if it isn't any good, then you are going to get very much marginalized. So I think we've got a game. Strongpoint is a game that people enjoy playing. The reviews have been from our customers have been spectacular. I mean, they're all 5-star reviews, and a number of people have said it's the best game they've ever played, and all this sort of thing. Which you take that with a pinch of salt, because some people perhaps their experience of games that they've played is less than others. So you don't,
Mm.
you know. But what we do know is that when people play our game, they enjoy it. It's fun, and I
Mhm.
think what you have to do to get noticed in this vast sea of games is make sure your game is one that people enjoy playing. And if you can do that, you've got off to a good start. And then I think it's just, kind of making sure you have a presence, whether it's at games conventions,
Mm.
whether it's at trade shows, or online social media presence. You have to do all of those things. And and honestly, I mean, it's for when it's just at the moment, it's just two of us having
Mm.
that consistency, especially in the social media and online can be a challenge. It can be hard to do that because,
Mm,
especially as my kind of social media skills aren't great, and a lot of the responsibility for doing that falls on Jill's shoulders, and
mm,
she's the one who's also has the other part-time job. So
mhm,
it does make things difficult.
mm.
But I think, like I said, I think the concept of our game is strong, and I think that as long as you have that, you always have that kind of possibility to be noticed and for people to kind of be aware of you.
I see. And I know that just like you say, marketing is definitely very, very important to get your words out there for the game that
Yeah.
you represent. What has worked well for the company so far? Like any specific platform, any specific strategy, marketing strategy that has been working well?
Um, I mean, I think we do we do relatively well on things like Insta. I mean, we're not as active on TikTok as probably we could and maybe should be.
Hmm.
Um, it's a platform that we haven't really delved into very much, and I think it's obviously one that has a great kind of opportunity for marketing
Hmm.
strategies. Um, so that's something that we probably in the future will probably take more seriously looking into that. But actually, some of the things that have worked best for us have been the kind of live in-person events,
Mm, okay.
whether it's been games conventions where
Mm,
you just have that visibility and people will, your convention of gamers, your game isn't necessarily going to be for everybody, but people will stop and have that conversation. What's this? How does this work? And usually when we can stop and engage people in conversation about the game,
mhm,
quite often they'll walk away with a copy of it because they like the sound of the concept.
mm,
So
okay.
games conventions are definitely a strong marketing strategy for us, and
Mhm,
even I mean because of the nature of our game
mhm,
is it's very much kind of a gift, the kind of game that people will give to somebody as a gift who might not be somebody who's necessarily a a kind of board gamer as such, but it's very much a game that non-gamers can get into and can like. So we find that
mhm.
it does get gifted quite a lot.
Oh, okay.
So in the run up to things like Christmas, the that quarter four from October to December, we do a lot of kind of Christmas market events and things like that, and they nearly always do really well for us.
I
As a,
see, I
not
see, I
just in
see.
terms of selling the game, but in terms of marketing and bringing the awareness of the game and our brand and what we have going forward and our future.
Mhm.
Those are good places for us and always have been.
Yeah, and I think your game have a unique twist on the typical trivia game. Can you explain
Yeah,
the concept a little bit further, and how do you land on that concept?
yeah. So the twist is that you don't necessarily have to be brilliant at trivia to win the game, which I think does set it apart from a lot of the other trivia games that are available. You can win based on how well you know the people that you're playing with and knowing what their strengths and weaknesses are. So if you can effectively predict accurately how well other people are going to do on their own goes, you can score points on other people's turns and win the game without even answering all that many trivia questions correctly yourself, which I think
Mhm.
does provide a little bit more of an opportunity for those people who will say, "Oh, I'm hopeless at trivia. I'm no good at that sort of thing. I don't like trivia. It's
Mhm.
always the same person who wins when we play trivia games." And I think our game
Yeah,
kind of levels the playing field a little bit. So that's probably the unique selling point. And how
yeah.
we settled on it, um, it was almost like a light bulb moment because the game started out something different. We were testing it. We were playing it ourselves and playing it with other members of the family and friends, and it was. I don't think this is going to work. I don't think this is going to work, and we couldn't kind of nail down what it was that wasn't quite right with the game. And
Mhm.
then Jill came home from her other job and said, "I've got it. I know what it. I know how we got all the things that are wrong with what the concept as it was." She was like, "I know how to do this. I've solved this." And she had the name, she had the concept and everything. And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds like that would work." So then we went and tried it again with other people, blind play testing it with people we didn't know. And the,
Mhm.
the results were, as I said, people loved
For
it.
our
So
listener that's not familiar with the rule, can you also explain the rule of your game, and so give people, the listener, more context on how this is different than the typical trivia game?
So yeah, on you when it's your turn, you'll somebody else will reveal a category card, and they'll say your category is going to be Shakespeare's plays, or it's going to be US sports teams, or it's going to be whatever, lots of different things. At that point, there will be 5 questions on the card for you to answer. But at that point, the other players have a set of prediction counters, 0 to 5, and they secretly take one and they place it face down, and deciding how many they think you will get based on whether they think that category that's come up for you is a strength, a strong point, or whether it's not.
Mhm.
So then you get asked the 5 questions and you score points for how many answers you get right. And rather than having a scoreboard or a score pad or something like that, we have points cards. So you would collect, say you got 3.3 answers right, you would collect a 3 points card.
Mhm.
All the players who predicted that you would get three, they also score a point. So as
Oh,
you're
okay.
playing,
Mhm.
you're collecting cards for your correct answers. You're collecting additional cards, the strong point cards for your correct predictions. And whenever you decide you've played for as long as you want, maybe it's everybody's had three turns. You just add up all the points cards you've collected for answering and for predicting. Whoever has the highest total wins the game. So it's actually
Mm.
very simple, very straightforward. But the one of the beauties is there's no downtime for any player. You're kind of involved all the time in everybody's turn, which I think can be a problem that people find with other trivia games. Is that when it's not your turn, you kind of zone out a little bit, and
Yeah, yeah,
and and like I said before, you generally a lot of trivia games you sit down to play and you go, well, I know that person's going to win anyway because they always win at trivia stuff.
yeah.
So hopefully we've tried to address kind of some of the most common complaints that people have with a trivia type party game, um, and make it a much more inclusive experience for players,
Mhm.
and make it a game that even people who aren't big trivia fans can actually get something out of.
I see. Yeah, yeah. That's I think that make the dynamic a little bit more interesting, because you also need to see, oh, how many do they actually got right, to
Yeah.
also keep track of, right, like the
And I
additional
think it's
points.
one of those things in a lot of games when somebody does something well, or that there's one person getting that moment of joy that you can get in a game. That expression of yes, and I've got 5 right, whatever. But in our game, you might have 3 or 4 people who are experiencing that same moment of joy if their
Mhm.
predictions are correct. So it's like a more of a collective um, expression of happiness at the same time. You know if you
Mhm.
understand what I mean? It's like it's
Yeah.
not because you can be successful on somebody else's go.
Mhm.
You can have multiple people celebrating success at the same time, which is a bit different.
I see. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think also for a lot of our listener, they are probably also going through a similar journey that you and I went through, where they are also trying to start their own game company or toy company part time on top of their full time career. And hoping to do that transition to become like a full-time game entrepreneur. What are some of the surprising part once you transition that you notice that you're not expecting before you go full-time? Any stories or any things that you like to share?
I think it probably shouldn't be surprising, but one of the things that has kind of been a pleasant surprise is how much of a supportive community there is out there of other indie board game publishers. There's so many places that online and in at conventions and things, so many places and people that you can go to where people are willing to offer help, offer support, offer ways to even things it might be things like, "Oh, we'll give your game a play test," or "We'll publicize your game on our socials, you do the same for us," and you're getting that kind of almost like a community spirit of indie board game publishers and designers who are really want everybody to succeed. We all kind of want every we all want somebody we know their game to be the next big thing would be great because it's
Mhm.
almost like a shared success story if you've been involved in collaborating even in a small way. So there's
Mhm.
definitely, I mean, there's communities out there. I mean, we're involved in a few things. Uh, Online. There's a board game prototype, which is a good community of gamers who on Instagram they're constantly communicating and sharing stories and sharing ideas. And then there's things like the Board Game Design Lab, which is
Okay.
a great resource for picking the brains of people who really know their stuff.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
guess that's been I shouldn't have been surprised, but coming into this industry, like I said, from a background of not having any knowledge of the industry at all 4 or 5 years ago,
Mhm.
that's been a real pleasant surprise.
I see. So you
How
mentioned
friendly and how wonderful everybody is.
okay. So you mentioned the board game design lab and any other resources that you'll recommend for people to look into.
So, the one that we kind of are involved in, it's more like I don't know how to describe it really. It's like a group where you just chat and you share posts, and every week you'll have like a theme where you can talk about something that's in your game, or just something that you're interested with, and it goes into this feed, and everybody's communicating and sharing ideas, and that's called Board Game Prototype.
Board game pro to
So
hype. Okay.
yeah, so that's another great community of people. So
Okay. We'll try to make sure we include that in the show note as well, so people can try
cool.
to find that. And what other advice will you give to, as we're kind of wrapping up today's interview?
Yeah.
The final question I always like to ask is like, if you have to share just one piece of advice with someone that's getting started in the toys and game industry, what would that be from your perspective?
One piece of advice, that's pretty tough. Um, I think can I give 2?
Sure, sure. Go ahead.
First,
Yeah.
because I think the first thing I would say is if you have a concept that you believe in and you think is strong,
Hmm.
and you you have to believe in yourself and take that opportunity to try and do something with that. Don't be too scared to to have a go. Um, and I think that, and to go along with that, I think the other advice I will give is there are people out there who you can seek and support and advice from, who've been involved in the industry, who know what they're doing, who have always willing to share their time and their knowledge and their expertise. So
Hmm.
reach out, find those people, find groups, whether it's by going to a games convention and meeting them in person, or whether it's reaching out to various things like the Board Game Design Lab online, and
Hmm.
just asking questions and and not being afraid to believe in your product, to believe in your game.
I see. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And where is the best place for people to find more about you and your company online?
So we have our own website, which is www.strongpointgame.co.uk. So that from there you can find, it tells a little bit about our story, our journey. Also has a portal where you can buy the game if you're interested, if it sounds like something that you would find fun. Um, we are we do sell on the most massive selling platform in the world, so you can get our game on Amazon. But I think at the moment that is restricted to the UK.
Mm. Okay,
We
got it.
haven't got it available in the US as yet. That's one of our goals for this year.
Mhm. Okay, got it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And for our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Toy Business Unboxed podcast. We really hope you have enjoyed today's conversation and find it insightful and inspiring. If you like what you have heard, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. We really appreciate your support and would love it if you can leave us a review and share the podcast with your friend and colleague. For more resources, tips, and the latest update within the toys and game industry, visit our website at toys-launch.com. Join the conversation and connect with us on social media using hashtag Toy Business Unboxed. And we love to hear your feedback and suggestions for future episodes. Until next time, keep innovating, keep creating, keep bringing joy to toys. This is Jason Shea signing off on the Toy Business Unboxed podcast, and we'll see you in the future episode. Thank you so much, everyone.